This episode is sponsored by PACS, the gold standard in emergency response bags. So when you're working under pressure, you need kit to be both dependable, tough and intuitive, and that's exactly what you get with PACS. Every bag is handcrafted by expert tailors who understand the demands of personal care, from the high-tech, skin-friendly and environmentally responsible materials to the cutting-edge welding process that reduces seams and makes cleaning easier. PACS absolutely puts performance first. They've partnered with 3M to make perfect reflective surfaces for better visibility, and bright grey interior makes finding kit effortless and fast, even in low light. With over 200 designs, PACS bags are made to suit your role, your needs and your environment. And thanks to their modular system, many bags work seamlessly together, no matter the setup. PACS doesn't chase trends, their designs stay consistent, so once you know one, you know them all. And if your bag ever takes a beating, their in-house repair team will bring it back to life. PACS are built to perform, made to last. Learn more at pacs.bags.com or head to the show notes for further details.
You're listening to the Pre-Hospital Care podcast on the Medics Academy Network.
Welcome back to the podcast. In this episode, I'm joined by Dr Celestine Weegenaar, the first female PHEM trainee at Great Western Air Ambulance Charity, or GWAAC. Originally from Amsterdam, now firmly rooted in southwest England, Celestine brings a wealth of experience from emergency departments and from across the region, even from the skies of Australia, where she used to fly with LifeFlight. So in this episode, what we're going to do is really just dig into Celestine or Celi's perspectives on training, teamwork and women in PHEM. And we're going to talk about her journey into pre-hospital emergency medicine, what drew her into the field, and indeed how she's navigating the challenges and rewards of her current role. So from the adrenaline of high-acuity pre-hospital care to the quiet moments of learning and growth alongside GWAAC's critical care team, Celi reflects on the realities of life as a trainee in this dynamic and demanding specialty. So she's also the new chair of the Pre-Hospital Emergency Medicine Trainees Association, and we're really going to get her take on her vision really for increasing inclusivity in the field, also breaking down barriers and supporting more women in the pursuits of PHEM. Welcome to the podcast, Celi.
Thank you for having me.
I wonder if we could just kick off and just really start with what sparked your interest really, Celi, into pre-hospital emergency medicine and indeed those yes moments for you that shaped your journey into PHEM.
Yeah, so I can remember the exact moment actually. It was when I was an F1, so first year of being a doctor, and I was sat in the library in Yeovil District Hospital where I was working. I'm not often in a library, but I was on this day. And I was looking through different career paths. I had an idea that I was interested in emergency medicine because I like the diversity of it. I like the practical skills, the fact you get to see a real range of things and learn lots of different things. And then I just stumbled across it really. I just stumbled across a page that explained what pre-hospital emergency medicine was. I had never realised it was a recognised subspecialty with its own training, with its own exams, that it was something you could become a specialist in. I knew that there were occasionally sometimes doctors on the helicopters or out on the road, but I didn't really know how that happened. I didn't know if they got called from the hospital to go out. And I just had this real light bulb moment. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. I enjoy the acuity of emergency medicine, but I also enjoy being out there on the road and being able to focus my entire attention on one person for a period of time, to make sort of quick decisions and quick interventions that will have immediate effect. And I guess from then on, every decision I made, whether that was the jobs I applied for, the additional degrees I studied for, or extra training I did, even going to Australia to work for LifeFlight, all of that was sort of anchored around the goal of ultimately getting a PHEM job. And I've actually really enjoyed having something to work towards because it's given me sort of a purpose in the last 10 years of my training.
Listen, that's fantastic. And I firmly believe in goal-orientated purposes. I think it really does help refine your training pathway and indeed your focus to get there. And you've absolutely proved that, Celi. But could I get you to speak to because there have been significant milestones. One is that you are Great Western Air Ambulance Charity's first female PHEM trainee. Could I just really get your take on what that means as a milestone to you? And indeed, how you found stepping into that role so far, because in a way there is going to be other females looking to you, both from an ambulance service, so from a critical care perspective, and indeed from a PHEM perspective. Could I get you to just your take on that?
Yeah, so it's so being the first female trainee at GWAAC is something that I'm personally really proud of, but it also represents a wider step forward with diversity in FEM. So when you apply for a FEM job as a critical care doctor, you apply nationally, you go through a national process. So getting a post through a national process means that things must be improving nationally. It is not a reflection on GWAAC that they haven't had female trainees previously, because in some sense they don't have control over the trainees that get the position there. But I think it's a really positive sign, and it's only possible because of the people who've come before me. That said, I do recognise that being the first carries a little bit of extra visibility, and I hope that I can make the path a little bit clearer for women and others. At GWAAC, we've been working on the Access to FEM programme. So we're running sessions for people who, right from the beginning, so medical students who know nothing about FEM, to people who are possibly a little bit interested in FEM, and then people who are about to apply, and even those right before their interviews. And the whole purpose of it is to try and demystify things about FEM, explain the pathways, make things really accessible and really clear, and help people to see that a career in FEM could be for them.
So what have you pulled forward really from your experience with LifeFlight in Australia? Because no two, the more I step into a global role with HEMS and see lots of HEMS services really in every different continent, I'm more realized no two HEMS services are the same, but there is uniting principles that you can pull forward and call forward really from your experience there. Could I get you to speak to really what you've pulled forward from LifeFlight in Australia into this current position?
Yeah, absolutely. So the jobs are quite different, and as you said, no two HEM services are the same, and the layout of a HEM service reflects sort of the geography of the area they serve, the demographics, the types of incidents they see, and the geography for a start in Australia is entirely different. So we were flying very large distances, spending hours getting to patients, taking patients to hospital, landing in the middle of nowhere, sometimes near hours from the nearest hospital. And I think I learned a lot in terms of, I became very comfortable with the aviation side of things, which was something which then when I started my FEM training job here, I didn't have to worry about doing all that while getting on top of my critical care. We also did a lot of retrieval. So I'd say that my job load in Australia was probably 80% retrieval, 20% HEMS, as in 20% primary jobs going to sort of the scene of something. So it was a lot of taking people for long distances in the back of a helicopter, where it can be really challenging to do anything because of small spaces, and just making the very best of what I had and the resources I had. I think those transferable skills also made me more adaptable in my role, in my HEMS role here. So it was a really good experience. I don't think it 100% prepared me for the job here, but it definitely gave me a lot of experiences, which meant that I was very comfortable in certain aspects of them here.
Yeah, as you said, actually, and we're doing a lot of work in Australia at the moment. I was surprised at the amount of secondary transfers, but again, like you said, the tyranny of distance and the tyranny of geography lends itself to a lot of repatriation to those specialist hospitals, and even Sydney HEMS, I think, is almost 50-50 primary work and secondary work, and actually there's a lot more secondary transfer, I think, involved in the Australasian side of things. Could I get you to speak to just your life now, actually, Sally, being rooted really back in your home territory, really sort of in your home region? Could I get you to speak to sort of just the influence that has on your development and well-being? I think one of the things I really realized during a HEMS secondment, and indeed through doing 10 years of HEMS, is actually understanding the local trauma networks and actually the ceiling of care within the ambulance service, the relationship with the critical care paramedics. There's so many nuances to actually being embedded within a service. Could I get you to speak to those nuances within GWAAC?
Yeah, so I guess training in my home region, It's been hugely positive for me. As you said, there's a lot to learn about the different networks. Having trained in this region for the past 10 years, I've already established some knowledge of the local hospital networks. I know the geography, so when we get a call, I can have an idea of where that is on the map, which sounds silly, but that's really helpful. I've also spent time developing an understanding of how the wider ambulance service works. So in a previous role, I helped to set up the community emergency medicine service here in the Southwest. And there's also just something really nice about delivering a patient to a hospital you know, and handing them over to a team you know, and that you're familiar with. And on a personal note, I've also been able to sort of keep a connection with my friends and my support networks, which through a challenging training program is really important for well-being. So for me personally, it's been a massive pro. Having said that, I can completely see the benefits of training in different regions, or even going abroad somewhere like Australia, because by stepping outside of your local area, you can see how different teams operate, how different services are set up, what they do, and then you can bring all those best bits back to your own practice and to your own service to improve things for the patient. So I think probably a mix of both, having strong local roots, but also getting some outside perspectives is probably the ideal.
Just looking at the concept of mentorship, Sally, and indeed, profound or significant mentors to you, really. I wondered if you could speak to maybe one, maybe two, and just really, the concept of how essential mentorship is really for empowering you as a clinician, but also just in a way inspiring you to walk in their footsteps. Could I get you to speak to one or two significant people in your own life that really have stepped into that mentorship role for you?
Of course. So I've actually been really lucky, and I've had lots of really good role models throughout my training and throughout my life even. If I think of sort of one in medicine and one outside of medicine, there's a female emergency medicine consultant I've worked with recently at a hospital in Bristol. And she just has this amazing, calm authority about her. She's confident without being intimidating. She can lead the team in a way that makes everyone feel valued. And then she always makes time to check in on them as human beings as well. And she'd hate for me to name her, but she is a brilliant role model. And then, yeah, I guess seeing that makes me realize that you can be authoritative and you can be a leader without fitting a particular role model. And I think lots of females struggle with that a little bit in their PHEM training, because lots of the people training them have been trained in a particular way. That's why I think one of the great things about bringing more diverse people into PHEM is we can learn different ways of being equally effective and achieving the same outcome. And then outside of medicine, my biggest inspiration would have to be my mum. She was the kind of person who just made me feel like anything was possible if I worked hard at it. So I think she's definitely part of the reason why I got to getting the PHEM job. There were times when I didn't think I'd get there, but she sort of always instilled in me that sense of confidence. Sadly, she passed away earlier this year, but I was proud that she got to see me in my PHEM job. So that's good.
Listen, that's powerful. That's absolutely powerful. So let's just pivot slightly, Sally, and look at the fact you've recently become the chair of the Pre-Hospital Emergency Medicine Trainees Association. And could I get you to speak to really what changes you'd like to see in this space to make them more inclusive and indeed accessible to women?
So for me, it's not just about making PHEM more accessible to women, although that's definitely important. It's just about making the specialty more inclusive, full stop. So we need to open doors to people from all walks of life. So whether that's different genders, ethnicities, or different types of backgrounds. A big part of that is visibility. So people need to be able to see somebody who's like them in the role that they want to get. But I think it's also about removing some simple practical barriers. So making training pathways more transparent, offering flexible opportunities like less than full-time training, and creating supportive networks so people feel that they might belong in that region. I think the more diverse that PHEM becomes, just the stronger it will become, because the patients that we are treating, they come from a diverse background. So our team should reflect that. And for those of you who don't know, I think you mentioned about the PHEMTA. So that's the Pre-Hospital Emergency Medicine Trainees Association. It's a long one, but it's a national organisation, and we represent all the FEM trainees in the country, in the UK. And we work to support them through their training, to help them with some educational resources, but also just to be a voice for them at a national level. So as a chair, I have the privilege of sitting on a few national boards, including the IBT FEM board. So they're the people who are responsible for our training, and the Faculty of Pre-Hospital Care. And that means that I can take the trainee perspective. We do a big survey every year where we gather a lot of information about people's experiences in training. And I can bring their perspective right into those conversations at a national level. And with the whole purpose and the whole reason why I wanted to do that role is so that I could help shape things to make training better and more accessible for the next people coming through, so the next generation.
Listen, that's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And I absolutely agree with you, actually. I think inclusivity is a huge part of FEM, as we see a huge, in a great way, a real changing landscape in the diversity of people involved. Could I get you to speak to, there's a real facet of FEM training, but also just of pre-hospital care in general, is team cohesion, and really operating in flash teams which are never the same on any given day. Could I get you to speak to really, what you've learned and some of your reflections, actually, Sally, into forming these high functioning flash teams?
So it's something I had to learn quite quickly. And one of the biggest things for sort of building quick team cohesion is it starts the moment that you're on scene, and it starts not just with what you're saying and what you're doing, but how you're doing those things. People work better together when there's a clear plan, when they know their role, when you're using language that they understand. And so establishing that from the beginning is, I think, key to having that team be successful. Even other things like learning their names, using their names. I think that's one of the hardest things I've actually found in FEM. So working in the emergency department, where I know people, in an emergency, I'll always be using their first name to get their attention, but also it's a safety thing. So you know you're talking to someone, they look at you, and you've got that closed loop communication. That's really hard when you don't know people's names, because I hate to sort of, I would never point. You don't want to be like you, but you have to develop little techniques to get away from that. And in general, people understand that you're not being rude. But I do find that challenging, just because I prefer to use people's names. But in an emergency situation, either there's not time to learn them, or there's no brain space for them to stay in my head. I think one of my strengths is that, and from feedback, is that I'm approachable, and I can stay calm under pressure. So hopefully that means that sort of working in these teams, people feel that they're able to speak up or flag concerns, because we're all in a team together, and people might see something that you've missed or that you haven't really sort of appreciated. And as I said, in pre-hospital, we often meet a team that we've never worked with before. So creating this sort of, we're all in this together sort of mantra, I think, is really helpful, and doing that quickly. And when you get it right, you can really see how much it lifts the whole team, and you're all working towards this shared goal of just doing the best thing possible for this patient, and getting them as much better as possible.
Yeah, indeed. No, indeed. Absolutely. Could I get you to speak to some of the biggest challenges, actually, Sally, that you've found within your FEM training? I very much, when I was learning to become a critical care paramedic, it was very much more about trying to step out of the linearity of just the medicine, and steward good non-technical skills as well as technical ones at the same time, parallel to making sure you're, providing gold standard clinical care. And it's really hard to do both of those at the same time. But could I get you to speak to, really, yeah, some of the biggest challenges you've encountered so far?
I think, like a lot of people, stepping into sort of a really highly specialized role, one of my biggest challenges has been sort of a sense of imposter syndrome. So I suddenly find myself in this orange jumpsuit, and you're working along people who have incredible skills and experience. So the critical care paramedics, the doctors, the ACPs I'm working with at GWAAC, they're people that I have known about for many years through going to clinical governance days, and they're sort of almost like this next level in my head, and they are in reality, they're excellent. And then it's easy to wonder, like, do I really deserve to be here? But what's helped me is sort of two things. One, reminding myself that I did get this job through a national recruitment process. So I do deserve to be here. I didn't just end up here by chance. So the second thing has been the support from the team at GWAAC. That's been huge. The critical care paramedics, the doctors, the advanced care practitioners that we have, they've all been incredibly supportive, and they've really given me the sense that they want me to succeed. That they're a real advocate for the trainee. And so if there's something going on and they think that it would be better for you to be doing it or for your experience, then they'll really sort of challenge each other and say, well, no, Celestine should be doing this so that she can learn. And you just feel really valued. So I think bit by bit, those small wins and those moments of progress, they sort of chip away at my self-doubt. And then you start to believe that, no, I do belong here. And yeah, I one day I'm going to be a really good PHEM doctor, and that's because of all these experiences I'm getting.
So just looking at the balance really, or indeed the integration between work life, going to get you to speak to really how you have integrated it, you know, within your wider life, and indeed how you maybe even unwind after shifts or an intense run of shifts.
It's definitely a work in progress. PHEM can be all-consuming when you're in the midst of your training. So I've had to be quite deliberate about making time for the things that keep me grounded. For me, that's playing volleyball or training at CrossFit and spending time with my family and friends. Those things aren't just hobbies, they're sort of like the reset button that means that I can show up better to work and I can do a better job for my patients. I've also learned to sort of give myself the permission to actually rest after shifts. So in this job, you can see and you can experience an awful lot in a day or in a couple of shifts. So building in space to sort of be able to properly decompress, whether that's going for a walk with a friend or just actually doing absolutely nothing for a bit, is just as important as the high energy stuff like the sport. And this job, it's just as important to look after your head as it is to sort of develop your skills. And so luckily I've got a variety of different things that I can do, but I just think it's super important to focus on your well-being, to make yourself a better doctor when you do arrive on the job.
So if you could just give one piece of advice, Sally, to young women considering a career in PHEM, could I get you to speak to what that would be?
So if PHEM is something that you're interested in, or even that you feel passionate about, just start taking small steps towards it. You don't need to write a paper and be first author. You don't need to come up with some brilliant research, original idea. Just do little things. So get involved with local teams, ask questions, seek out mentors, and just say yes to opportunities, even if they feel a little bit out of your comfort zone. Don't do anything you don't want to do. Throughout my training, there were lots of little opportunities to get involved in things, and I didn't always see the bigger picture when I said yes to that. But getting involved in this little bit of research maybe then opened up doors for other opportunities and other things. And so I think if you feel like you can say yes to something, say yes to something. And then importantly, just remember that you don't have to fit a certain mold to be in PHEM. So you might not see yourself as sort of an alpha male or one of these sort of stereotypical leadership styles that are often associated with PHEM, but that's absolutely fine. You can bring your own strengths and your own style, and that's what's actually going to make you stand out. So there is a place for you in this field, and your perspective will make the team, whatever team you're working with, stronger.
So just finally, Sally, could you speak to really what you hope your legacy will be as a doctor, but also as a leader, and indeed as someone breaking new ground in PHEM? And I guess this speaks to your role within GWAAC, but it also speaks to your role nationally, actually. And could I get you to speak to maybe what you perceive your legacy will be?
Well, I'm not sure I'm going to have a legacy, but I'd love for my legacy to be about opening doors for other people. So if years from now there are more women in PHEM or more people from all sorts of different backgrounds in PHEM, and if even one of them felt that they could achieve that because they saw a role model doing it, or they saw somebody in the field doing it, or even because they engaged with sort of our access to PHEM programs that we're running at GWAAC, that would mean an awful lot. As a doctor, I hope that people remember me as someone who brought compassion, but also competence. And as a leader, I'd like to be known for creating an environment where people felt supported to grow, where they could challenge themselves, and where they could bring their whole selves and their individual unique selves to a team. I guess ultimately, I just want to leave the specialty a little bit more welcoming and accessible than I found it.
So, and I just wondered, Sally, if I could just get you to speak to as well, just as we finish off, just how you approach the palliative nature of critical care. And what by that I mean is there's actually a large percentage of critical care patients which do have a clinical endpoint in on scene, and that you don't manage to revive or indeed take to hospital, and actually the end of their life is at your hands, indeed, at scene. Could I get you to speak to just how you deal with the caseload of what would be quite a large number of cases which you end up having to withdraw critical and or clinical care from?
Yeah, so sadly, dealing with death is a big part of a PHEM job or a pre-hospital job, especially in critical care. And I think it would be very easy to get to a job, for example, like a cardiac arrest, and you get to the point of calling it and you think, okay, there's no critical care, I need to deliver here. Let's go on to the next job. But actually, I think it's our responsibility as a critical care team to help support the families of the patient, the actual patient, if sort of they haven't had a cardiac arrest, but perhaps are end of life and it's coming soon. And also the road paramedics and other allied healthcare professionals we're working with, whether that's police officers or firefighters. We unfortunately do see a lot of death in our jobs, and that kind of makes us an expert in it. And a road crew may not have been out to a cardiac arrest in months, or it might be their first one that year, or it might be their first major trauma that they're at. And so we can bring our experience and we can help them through that. And I think it's not just we can, I think we should, and that's part of our job. And being able to give someone a nice death, so providing proper palliative care, is an enormous privilege and a really big responsibility that we should take very seriously. So even in the emergency department, if I see that somebody is approaching the last few hours of their life or even the last few days, I think it's incredibly important that you do everything you can to prepare them, so make them as comfortable as possible, but prepare their family as well. And so even if we're not delivering fancy critical care, putting in art lines, intubating, etc., we can bring the experience and the skills that we have. And that's where I think having people from sort of different backgrounds and being able to approach that in different ways is really important as well. So yes, it's unfortunate that we actually are probably experts in death, but we need to use that as a positive to help improve sort of our patients' care, but also their families, and then our crew members and other people we're working with on the roadside.
Sally, listen, thank you for the last 45 minutes. It's fantastic just to touch base with you. Also, just get your reflections in your career and indeed in your goals and visions. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me.
You're listening to the Pre-Hospital Care podcast on the Medics Academy Network.